Hello and welcome to this episode of East Valley Business, the podcast. My name is David Key. I'm your host today. I'm here with Angela Johnson, the co-founder of Fabric, among many other things, which I'd love to hear more about. So for those who may not know you, give us some highlights of your background and your career.
Okay. Well, yeah, Fabric. I'm the co-founder with another woman named Sherry Berry, and it's a fashion incubator. It actually stands for the Fashion and Business Resource Innovation Center. And it's basically a place that helps fashion designers, fashion brands, apparel entrepreneurs be able to start businesses and manufacture their products. And this was a result of just the struggles that I had experienced as an apparel entrepreneur, trying to find domestic small batch manufacturing back in the 90s when I owned my own brand. And so now I'm just using the skills that I learned in Los Angeles to be able to help other apparel entrepreneurs now right here in Tempe. So I can touch a little bit on that if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Okay. So basically I'm from Arizona. I'm actually fifth generation, but wow. I had moved to Los Angeles to go to fashion school. And I went to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, and I majored in fashion design. And then I went to the Career Center before I graduated to try to get a job in the industry. I wanted to work specifically, and you'll enjoy this because you're a musician. I wanted to work specifically for Mike D of the Beastie Boys. He had a clothing brand called X Large, and Kim Gordon of Sonic Youth had a clothing brand called X Girl. They were both under the same umbrella, and I had been a fan of both bands and the brand. So they got me in for an interview, and I ended up getting the job, and I was the cutter. And then I eventually worked my way up to become the assistant designer, and then the designer, and then the production manager at these brands. And the production management part was really the key to the rest of my life, because I actually learned everything it takes to make small batches of apparel domestically, which is really an opposite model of how the fashion industry really works. You're normally making hundreds of thousands of units overseas in some sweatshop. I mean, that's what the fashion industry is built on. And so to be able to make small batches domestically is a vastly different skill set. And it took contracting out people in Los Angeles to do each job separately to be able to do that. So going to a pattern maker, going to a grading company who sizes it, going to a cutting service, picking up fabrics, dropping them off, going to sewing contractors, just being in LA and going from place to place taught me everything about how to skirt under the minimums and create small batches. And so while I was working for X Large and X Girl, I decided to start my own clothing brand. I partnered with an actress on the soap opera Days of Our Lives, and her name is Christy Clark. She played a character called Carrie Brady on that show. And we ended up starting a clothing brand called Monkey Wench. And it was girls' snow, skate, and surf apparel. And this was around the time that Roxy Quicksilver started becoming a thing. And girls, were getting more into the board sports area. And I was a snowboarder. I had gone to NAU prior to fashion school and had been one of the only girls snowboarding on the mountain for many years. So I knew there was a need for this product. And so we started this brand, and we started small. I mean, we only made 50 units of the pieces that we were making, which is really unheard of in manufacturing. And this allowed me to start small and grow a business without a huge investment. And then we ended up eventually selling worldwide. We had stores all over the US and Japan and England carrying our stuff. We had every celebrity in the 90s you can imagine, like Leonardo DiCaprio and Christina Applegate and Quentin Tarantino and Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson. Like all these people owned our products. Our stuff was even on 90210. I mean, it was actually, I was living my dream. It was actually a thing. And then I moved back here to Arizona to take care of my grandmother when my grandma passed away. And I had to close it because there were no manufacturing resources in Arizona. And it didn't make sense to go to LA every day. And I still had to be very hands-on because even though I had grown a brand, it wasn't big enough to have the amount of staff that's needed to manage that without me being involved and to then transfer overseas. Nor did I want to transfer overseas because it's really unsustainable and really unethical. So I had to shut down a profitable business in 2001. And that's when I just changed my career and I started consulting and teaching. I've taught at ASU, Mesa Community College, Collins College, Art Institute of Phoenix, New School for the Arts. I've taught every fashion class you can imagine. And I've consulted hundreds, and at this point, thousands of apparel entrepreneurs and taught them everything that I know about manufacturing in small batches domestically. And eventually, I just realized we needed resources in Arizona because after consulting and teaching all these people and watching them leave to go find the resources in LA or New York, I wanted to keep them here,
Similar experience for the music industry.
Really? Wow.
Not as many resources. I mean, Phoenix is a great market for concerts, but people often go to LA or New York City.
Right. It makes so much sense because that's where all the resources, all the equipment, all the skilled people, everything is located there. And so, but the difference is, we are right next to California. We actually are, growing in so many other industries. And, because of the internet, anybody can start a clothing brand online and sell a product worldwide. It's really easy to spin up a website and, get good SEO. But if you have no way to actually manufacture clothing, that's a broken, system. And so being able to help people then manufacture clothing in small batches really became my life's work. And that kind of segued into fabric. So long story, but that's...
I love that. That's what we're here to hear about. I'm so impressed. Especially the piece of being willing to walk away if you weren't doing it on your terms, right?
Yeah.
It's so valuable. It's good to have principles and boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And for you to not just stop there, right? And say, well, there is a need that's not met and therefore I'm going to step away from this, but to step back to it and say, I'm going to help the people with the same challenge.
Yeah,
right?
it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make to shut that brand down. But life happens and the universe sets you up for what you're supposed to do. And I just went with the flow and turns out this is what I'm supposed to do.
Absolutely. You never miss out on what's meant for you, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So there's a lot to dive into there. Within that, is there a moment that stands out as the proudest moment of your career thus far, right? Because there will be plenty of additions.
It's really hard to pick one. I've had some great experiences in my career journey. And so I'm actually going to select three, if that's okay with you.
I love the top three.
Okay. They're all so different. So I think probably one of the proudest moments in the part where, in the first part of my journey was being able to start my own brand, like just being able to do all the things that I'd gone to school for and achieve that level of success in that industry was really proud for me. So Monkey Wench. And then creating fabric was another one because it's a completely different industry. It's the same industry, but a different side of the industry. And so being able to open the doors to the place that now helps other people live their dreams was a really proud moment for me too. So Tempe has a really big place in my heart because of that. And then also at Fabric, we actually had a visit from President Biden and Vice President Harris. They actually came to Fabric and recognized our efforts during the pandemic. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. To have the White House, come visit you is a pretty remarkable, special moment. So that's something I'll never forget.
It's the American dream right there, no? Having something recognized by somebody who has such a broad scope, right? Our presidents have seen it all, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they were both impressed with the work you're doing.
Well, I hope.
And we touched on it. You did a very meaningful and purpose-driven thing during the pandemic to serve others with your abilities, right? Some people were kind of feeling stuck. Like, what do I do? How do I help other people? And I think that's the beauty that came out of that time is that hardship. It's the hardship that you endured early in your career and throughout your career. You took that and put it in a place of let me help and serve others. And I think some of the work we do is similar in that we serve entrepreneurs, right? We empower others for their dream. And it's funny that like our dream could be someone else's dream, right? I had that experience in the music industry. I didn't need to be on stage to feel like I was fulfilled. it was, you would see your rock stars out there, right? It's literally your partners in business at one time. So cool, by the way. Very jealous. But I love that you've had those experiences, and I love that you empower entrepreneurs. And can you talk about some of those challenges? You've really addressed those challenges, but could we dive into a little bit of that fast fashion piece? Because like you hinted at it, there's a lot of disparity, and there's a lot of waste. We've talked about that plenty in the past. What does that problem look like? And maybe if you have any, numbers, but more so like give the viewers an idea of like, what it means when they go to a store and a brand has got, like you said, 100,000 pieces of the same product.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, right now the fashion industry is actually in disruption because it is one of the most unsustainable industries on the planet. Think about it. Every human buys this product. Every human on the planet wears clothes. And so it's everywhere. And, we've gotten into this thinking that clothing is disposable. And fast fashion just pushes that idea. And so we always want something new and the latest, greatest thing. And basically the model is set up, the more you produce, the cheaper it is, right? It's just the economies of scale. So when you buy something, a garment that is, let's say, a $30 shirt or something, if you can think about the fact that hundreds of people had to be involved in making that item, how is it even possible to make a $30 shirt, right? It should be we should all just be thinking about our clothing different. And if you knew what went into making clothing, you would, but most people don't. And so it's really not your fault, as a consumer, because the information's not really out there. It's starting to become, more and more prevalent. But basically, the industry is broken. It's kind of in disruption right now, but the big brands are having a hard time figuring out how to turn. They're like these big ships in the night that can't pivot on a dime. And so changing your entire model is really difficult to do. And our dollars as consumers are driving them to just not change, So we all have to think of our clothing to be different. And here's the reason. This is so unsustainable because, first of all, when you have to make so much, you end up with excess. Most of the brands can't sell all of that. So that ends up in our landfills. It also ends up burned in incinerators. And most clothing nowadays, to make it cheaper, is made out of polyester or other man-made materials, which is essentially petroleum-based. We're all wearing plastic. And that plastic, when it lands in the landfill, isn't going anywhere. It's just filling up. In fact, most clothing ends up, all clothing eventually ends up there, but most of it ends up, there before anybody ever even wears it. And we're pushing all of this excess to, Africa and places like that. The beaches of Ghana are just filled with all of our leftover clothing. You can see it from space. So it's a really big problem and something needs to be done about it. And really the solution is a lot of different things. It's us as consumers thinking about our clothing differently, buying less of it, holding on to it longer, trying to keep it out of the landfill as long as possible, spending more. We need to appreciate what we're buying. It's actually like art, it's actually something that is valuable. It shouldn't be thought of as disposable. It shouldn't cost less than our lunch. It should be something that we all care about. And so we all have to have a different mindset about it. And then put your money where that matters, and buying something from brands who are doing things in a different way that aren't doing that fast fashion model. So what I mean by that is supporting smaller apparel entrepreneurs that are making just what has been ordered. And that is something we're actually doing at Fabric, is helping these apparel entrepreneurs by using the latest technology so that they can do what we call batched on-demand manufacturing, where instead of making, let's say, 200,000 of something and sitting on the inventory and hoping to sell it, we're actually taking technology to allow us to be able to fill orders as they come in. And these are specialized creative orders. So for example, if a brand wanted to create, let's say, a dress, then we can create it digitally. We can give them a 3D avatar of their design. They can play with prints and really unique artwork on that dress. They can show it on a website. They can gather orders from those from their website, and then we can fill just what has been ordered. So if somebody ordered like a small in the octopus print and a medium in the floral print and a large in the rainbow print, we will just print, cut, and sew what has been ordered. And then we embed a digital product passport into those garments so that anybody can tap it with their phone and they can see how that garment was made. So it's all about transparency and showing and educating the consumer what it took to make this garment. And so they have a better appreciation for it. Then that digital product passport can actually be passed on to the person who bought the garment, and they can add to the timeline. So not only will you have videos of the people sewing it and everything that helps you understand how it was made, but you as the person who bought it can say, hey, I wore my dress, to this concert. I went to see David play, and here I am wearing my dress to his concert. And then that becomes a keepsake for them, like a scrapbook of everything they've done in that dress. And then they can share that on social media. So it's helping to market that sustainable brand, and they're holding on to that garment longer. So there's all kinds of things that we can do to appreciate our clothing and kind of push back against that fast fashion model. And that's really the whole thing that we do at Fabric.
Absolutely. And I love the art comparison. I love the fact that you're talking about voting with your dollar, right? Mm-hmm. You're making your impact, having your influence as a consumer, conscious decision making, right? Like a $30 shirt each year costs you more than a $50 or $60 shirt that you wear for 3, 4, 5 years, right?
Yep.
And that's, I think, what the joy of thrifting, right? You find these brands where they were made at a time where this is durable.
Yeah.
You find an old pair of jeans and there aren't rips in them, but there are rips in the jeans that you bought a year ago, right? Because it's that polyester, right? Instead of that denim.
Yeah. They don't make it like they used to, is really the saying here in fashion for sure.
Right? Absolutely. And, I see it with bands, they're printing merchandise. Okay, what's the cheapest? What's the, we get into that. We think about price instead of value.
Right. Yes, that's another thing is everybody just, I think with any commodity, we all have to think a little bit differently. And we're starting to do that in food, for example. It used to be that you couldn't imagine paying more than $5 for a hamburger, right?
Yeah.
But now, you'll buy a $20 hamburger because you care about the cow and the person who owns that restaurant. And,
Absolutely.
It's all organic and it's, grass-fed and all the things, but, that's not happening in every industry yet, and it needs to. And so fashion is just starting to become that way. And, that kind of also brings me to, I mentioned the journey that I had to get to this point. And when I did move back to Arizona, one of the things that I did to stay creative was I started my own clothing brand that didn't have to be manufactured. It was made one at a time by myself, and it's actually taking those pieces from the landfill and repurposing them into something else. So I make what I call t-shirt ball gowns, and they're basically about 25 t-shirts patchworked together to create a corseted ball gown. And that was kind of my bread and butter the whole time I was building the community here. But upcycling is my point. Finding a way to build or to keep that thing out of the landfill longer is really the case. And so shopping from thrift stores and passing it on to friends and clothing swaps and things are the way to go. I mean, I think it's had a stigma against it for so long. People think, used clothing,
right.
But it really shouldn't. I mean, we should all embrace that. That's going to be the solution.
You're extending the life of that product, right? And when you think about art, right, we want to preserve art. We want to carry it forward. We want to gift it to people. We want to put it up in our house. A piece of clothing could maybe become an art project, right? In that way.
Yep.
And I love the emphasis on sustainability, and we've talked about this quite a bit, I think, and kind of fall on the note that sustainable business is good business.
Yes.
It is the best idea to be conscious of waste. It is the best idea to have efficient processes. Mm-hmm. It is the best idea to have a quality product, right? These are all things that point in the right direction. And I love what you're saying. These other industries are kind of influencing and inspiring.
Yeah.
Is there one industry where you'd say like, okay, fashion entrepreneurs, study up maybe what's going on over here?
Well, like the food industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel like that was, that's one that not everybody. I mean, there's still going to be the people that go get the fast food, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Convenience culture.
Yeah. And sometimes that's all you can afford. And same with fashion, that we shouldn't look down on the person who can't afford to buy something more expensive, but we should try to thrift, and we should try to if we are going to buy something from a fast fashion place, we should hold on to it longer. We think about how many times you're going to wear that thing. You mentioned, the how many uses you get out of that product. So if you are going to buy something from a place like that, just make it worth it and keep it and pass it down and hold on to it longer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thrift, right?
Yes.
That's kind of how we think about food is, there's centralized systems that produce waste.
Yep.
But there are entrepreneurs, are farmers, right?
Yep.
People forget farmers are entrepreneurs.
Yep.
There's a startup. You get your equipment. You have a vision. And supporting those farmers markets and voting with your dollar. And, hopefully, was it Albertsons and Kroger merger doesn't get approved because there would be so much control over those markets.
Right.
And so it's just like decentralizing and disseminating those resources.
Yeah.
There's so much value in what you're doing. And I want to get a little specific for a moment. And, shout out to Sherry, your co-founder, fantastic individual. You both come to our Tempe Chamber events in clothing that you've designed. And it's like turned into a highlight of those events for me personally.
Thanks.
So I love that. Now, what specific things, what maybe something that you aspire to do and something that you're currently doing within Fabric to empower those individuals, right? Something that we haven't touched on.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Sherry because Sherry's kind of that, she's that left brain analytical side to our business, and I'm the right brain creative, community builder person. So we make a really good combination. And so it was because of Sherry that we actually stepped up during the pandemic and made those medical gowns. That's actually a really good example of everything I've just been talking about because, during the pandemic, there was no way to get medical gowns for doctors and hospitals. And we were getting phone calls from people because we know how to sew. Hey, can you help us? And I'm wearing a trash bag and people were crying and things like that. And Sherry was like, we are going to try to fix this because we have the skill, we have the equipment, and we know how to do this. And so she got us through getting FDA certification, locating medical grade material, learning lean manufacturing. Basically, we partnered with GPEC and they helped us understand how to go from small batches to very large batches. We ended up making 800,000 reusable medical gowns, and they could each be washed 100 times. It kept 80 million disposable gowns from going in the landfill. But this is an important factor in everything we've just been talking about, because one of the things is that whole, the whole fast fashion model. And, when the world opened back up again and everything kind of returned to the norm that it was before, the industry, the market was saturated with the disposable ones from overseas again. And there was no way for us to kind of compete with that anymore. Yeah. And so we had all the infrastructure in place now to create reusable medical gowns for all of the healthcare industry in the United States, but we were abandoned. And all of that ended up, we had to close that factory down and we had to let go all those employees. And we were stuck with 25,000 yards of medical grade material because that's how much we had to buy when we were, in a pandemic in order to get it. And all of that was really a big eye opener for me, in that even the industry, doesn't support itself. Even the fact that we had a solution. We created, a way that you can actually make something domestically that was meaningful and that was sustainable and that was, ethical and all those things. It ended up returning back to the fast fashion model in medical gowns afterwards, So, what we decided to do was pivot again and figure it out. And we started to lean into all the technology, thanks to Sherry's big brain again. She said, we're gonna use this to, basically help apparel entrepreneurs. And we took every resource that we had after closing that factory and invested it into all the end-to-end technology that we now have that allows us to do these batched on-demand, really creative things that I was telling you about. And so one of those things is this printer, and the printer is fully sustainable. It uses no excess water, and it can print on any fiber. So this is important because you can print on bamboo and hemp and cactus leather and whatever you want. It's pretty great. And so that's what enables us to help these apparel entrepreneurs now create these unique pieces that are going to be different than what you buy at, a fast fashion store. And I'm not going to call out any brands, but instead of buying something at some fast fashion store, you could be investing in something that was made sustainably at a fashion incubator and supporting these apparel entrepreneurs. And so that's our next move, is trying to push that forward, trying to figure out how to make that a viable model, because, there's a lot that we do to help these apparel entrepreneurs. It's expensive to do all of that. And we've been trying to pivot and figure it out on our own as just two really scrappy women and a community of people. We've never really fully had a big sponsor, a big donor, a big grant of any kind that's really helped us do this. So we've gotten this far without that kind of help. But if we're going to change the world and actually set the model for the rest of the industry on proving that you can have a circular supply chain, that you can create sustainable things ethically and, do that domestically, we need some sort of support. So right now, that's what we're doing. We're trying to figure out how to keep this model going and find that right partner.
Well, that's the call to action right there, right?
Yeah.
And maybe someone who might be feeling like they're being talked about when you touch on fast fashion, of course, not calling them out, but maybe just encouraging those people. If you feel like you fall into that bucket, open invitation to collaborate with some of your entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah. Or to collaborate with fabric.
Collaborate with fabric.
If you are a fast fashion brand and you're saying you're sustainable, but you're not really doing something sustainable, there's a lot of greenwashing going on in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be the fashion industry. Any big, a corporate entity or whatever that really wants to align themselves with an entity like ours that is supporting entrepreneurism, sustainability, technology. We scholarship 290 apparel entrepreneurs into the education that allows them to get through small batch manufacturing.
Wow.
And those are all disadvantaged entrepreneurs. So minorities, veterans, people with disabilities, and people who have a significant financial need, and women all get assistance in understanding and learning the ropes so that they can get through small batch apparel manufacturing. And if anybody wants to align with any of those check boxes, that's what we do. And I would think that would be a really easy way to actually do something that's sustainable.
Absolutely. Well, I was trying to think of a brand that, like you said, maybe not in fashion, but a brand that values fashion and gives to their employees. Dutch Brothers comes to mind.
Oh, wow.
They're moving to town right now.
You're just calling out Dutch Brothers right now. Hey, guys.
I guess I am. Hey. No, but when I walk up to Dutch Brothers and I'm getting my drink, I see them in these unique clothes. It's one of the unique employee benefits that I've learned about is they're giving their employees all these really unique branded pieces of clothing.
Really?
Maybe there's a way that they could source some of that locally and make it even more unique and kind of like hard to obtain, right? Those are special pieces of clothing.
That's
and
amazing.
So I think, that having the rarity, right, increases the value like we talked about.
It does. Yeah.
It may increase the price a little bit.
Yeah.
But it increases the value even more.
Yeah. I always compare it to a painting. When you're buying the original and it took somebody months to make it, right?
Yeah.
It's valued a lot more than if you're now taking that and just selling the prints.
Absolutely.
So that's clothing. There's going to be a lot of work that goes into one or a dozen or 100. Those are micro manufacturing numbers. That's not even manufacturing. That's sample making.
Yeah.
So those are expensive. But they're valuable because they're limited edition. There's story behind it. And that's why that digital product passport is so important in telling that story.
I think of the test press of a vinyl, or some companies will put their prototype on display and say, hey, it used to look like that.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's value there.
Yeah.
And a unique creation. So one thing I like to ask people, what is your superpower?
I guess it would just be, well, first of all, specifically, it's this ability to understand and manage small batch apparel manufacturing. As a physical skill, I think that's where my biggest skill is, just understanding that whole concept and how it works and helping other people understand that. As a personality superpower, I guess it would be just having, I think I have a lot of empathy and an ability to sort of adapt and change. And I think that's really important in helping other people, and I think that's my whole life's mission, is helping other people. So just being able to understand what it is that they need and be able to help them.
It's an incredible superpower.
Thank you.
Yeah. Empathy, it can be hard for some people. It takes practice.
Yeah.
Putting yourself in other people's shoes, right?
Yeah.
And I really have to applaud your involvement with the community, the fact that you have these partnerships, the fact that you're building up entrepreneurs, the fact that you joined the Tempe Chamber and really dove in not just to participate, but like you said, to help others. So you've been the chair of our sustainability committee, which is a very appropriate place to be and a role to fill given the conversation today. You were named the 2023 Businesswoman of the Year.
It's such an honor.
And you spoke about it so eloquently at the event where, we were announcing our next Businesswoman of the Year. So any thoughts on that and just that value of that community engagement?
Yeah, I think that's a really important part. When you're an entrepreneur, it's a lonely ride. You're sitting in front of your computer. I think people, especially in fashion, think that we do all this glamorous stuff and we're behind a dress form and we're drawing pretty pictures. I'm literally in front of my computer all day, every day. And, that's a lonely place sometimes. And so you got to get out there and you got to meet other people and you got to engage and build that community and that support system. And that makes everything so much easier. I've built relationships like, we just had an amazing discussion because now I feel like I have a friend in you here at the Tempe Chamber. And so many people at the Tempe Chamber have become my friends. And really that helps so much when you're, working so hard to know that there's other people that are also in the same boat and you can, bounce things off each other. You can support each other. You can just kind of discuss it and feel better afterwards and those kind of things. So commiserate, that's the word I'm looking for, with each other. So that's really valuable. It gets you out of your computer.
Absolutely, right? Like finding people that maybe just identify with the same challenges as you. We look for people that want to do business with our members, but also to find somebody that can change the way that you do business. Yeah. And when I say phrases like that, they're open-ended, right? They may sound like, well, that's a nice idea, but this podcast is proof. I'm talking to you right now. You're one of those people. I think you impact people in that way where they think about the way that they do things. At least that's how I feel. So I feel like I think about the way that I do things because of people like yourself. And that's the value of a chamber.
It really is.
It's the community. Mm-hmm. We're just connecting and organizing, We're
That's
like you in that executive role where there's magic happening, but some of that magic needs people who are on the computer or making the phone calls. They're filing the invoices and they're doing the paperwork, but it allows the magic to happen.
Well, it's been like a complete honor to be, in the role at the sustainability section of the chamber, and basically, like that is providing those connections and things to people that I never would have met before either. So, there is a strategy also as an entrepreneur to try to figure out how to grow your business. And if I were to give somebody advice, I would say get involved in things like the chamber. Just get involved, like be able to, lead a committee or take on a role or whatever, because even though it's also going to just be a rewarding thing and you make friends, but it's also a good thing for your business. You meet the right people and eventually it leads to this and this, and eventually you're on a podcast.
Yeah. And especially for maybe those people who aren't entrepreneurs, but feel entrepreneurial, they feel like giving back at these large organizations. Go to your leadership. Tell them what's important to you, right? And we talk about sustainability. Our sustainability summit's coming up in September. Mm-hmm. So I'd love for people to go check that out. But all that to say is a lot of support for that program came through Salt River Project, SRP. Mm-hmm. And it came from those individuals within that team who valued the mission. Right. So you can make change. And sometimes it's through a large organization. Sometimes it's through your own project. Both of those things I think are happening through Fabric. There's so much happening, and I would say that people should reach out to you and maybe schedule a tour. Yeah,
I'd love that. In fact, we do them twice a week, every Tuesday at 4 and Friday at 10. Tuesday at 4 is in person, Friday at 10 is virtual, and you can sign up on fabricincubator.com.
Fantastic. And how can people get in touch with you? I think there'd be so much value to people to pick this conversation up with you.
Just go to fabricincubator.com and we have a contact page. And that just goes directly to me and Sherry and our executive director, and one of us will respond. We are always accepting of anybody who needs advice or wants to or they're curious or, wants to get involved. I mean, it's a community-based organization. We're a nonprofit. That's what we're there for.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for teaching us about fabric, the fashion industry, sharing your experience in the chamber and in the community. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me today, and for also inviting me to be on the sustainability committee. It's a really meaningful thing for me, so I appreciate it, and the fact that I've gotten to work with you even more and built this friendship together. I appreciate it.
There's so much value in relationships. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in. This was a great conversation. We have a lot of conversations just like this with great people across the valley. So thanks for tuning in to East Valley Business. We hope to see you on the next episode.